Hello people of YouTube, this is a special report, your news and views program about geek gaming culture on the internet. Coming up in the show today, several Twitter users report that their tweets were removed and their accounts might have been suspended as a direct result of DMCA takedown requests from retweets from just talking about a certain website or certain animes. My name is JD Shadow and the special report will start right now. Several Twitter handles were targeted as a result of a copyright sweep this past Sunday. According to at least 3 of the affected Twitter users, their tweets were removed by Twitter as a direct result of a DMCA notice due to the tweets either containing links to infringing material or containing infringing material in of itself. Now, looking through these tweets and from what other people have said, one particular anime streaming site seems to be in common with these tweets that have been taken down, which is Kiss Anime, a anime streaming site that has been targeted by a group known as the Japan Creative Content Alliance LLC, a group that seemingly represents a ton of anime companies and animes themselves. However, several people have claimed that their tweets that were removed did not contain any actual infringing material and had only discussed Kiss Anime, or in one particular tweet's case, linked to a Alexa search ranking of that particular anime site in relation to a Crunchyroll who people might be familiar with. However, please be advised that these might not be the only Twitter handles that were actually affected, and that this is not limited to those people who were only mentioning Kiss Anime. There might have been several others that were victim of a Twitter sweep that might have not even said anything about Kiss Anime, but had mentioned an anime in of itself. The reason for that is the other firm that was listed in the emails, known as Remove Your Media LLC. These people are based in Piano, Texas, and are employed by the JCCA in order to enforce their copyrights. However, the Remove Your Media firm has seemingly been draconian in their measures. If you take a look on their Google Transparency Report, there are a good bit of URLs that had been targeted by this particular company who specializes in anime copyright enforcement. But they've also come under fire for their handling of particular copyright enforcement because, according to a few blogs, they have also been targeted by Remove Your Media for simply talking about the anime in question in their URL and not containing any copyright infringing content at all. In at least one instance, a particular blogger said that they were targeted URL for a story about anime was too similar to the URL that a illegal streaming site was also using. And they were also under fire when they targeted the internet's own boy on YouTube, which is the documentary of Aaron Swartz's life, the person that was responsible for creating the Creative Commons. The director of that particular film, Brian Knaffelberger, chose to make the film Creative Commons license mean anyone can use the material without fear of copyright infringement, according to the Daily Dot, but Remove Your Media was the ones that took down the content without his approval of doing so. The YouTube video was since reinstated. But for right now, and as far as I know, there is no way in order to appeal DMCA claims from your account on Twitter. Now, please be advised that I have gone to Viz Media. I have emailed Viz concerning this situation. It is the same person who we have talked to in the past about the Sailor Moon copyright sweep that happened back in January. I am awaiting a reply back to them concerning this situation. And the reason why I have taken it upon myself to email them is because they have also used Remove Your Media LLC for their own means. Okay, so let's get first to the main issue with Kiss Anime. Now, just talking about the particular website is not enough to get you into grounds for copyright infringement, or it should not. That isn't fair use. You are just talking about the website in and of itself, though there is some gray area that you might want to consider in this situation. We know all about things like emulators and ROMs for video games, where just talking about ROMs and emulation makes some people squeamish because they don't want to be taken down for just talking about the legality of ROMs or emulation. Although some do allow stuff like that to flourish, they don't don't allow actual links to be posted onto their website or their Twitch handles or Twitch chats or whatever. With this particular situation, I feel it's the same way. Some people might not want to link to the actual site in and of itself, but they want to at least discuss the legality of certain sites, and in this case it is Kiss Anime, though it is really hard to say if that is the only thing that was mentioned in these removed tweets, because we only got a few people talking about what their tweets actually contained. We don't know whether or not it is limited to just that, which is making it a little hard to say whether or not they actually linked to the site in question. And it is true that the Japan Creative Content Alliance has been targeting this Kiss Anime site. Now, I am not too familiar with Kiss Anime in of itself. I do know that it is a anime streaming site, though I am not quite sure of whether or not they are in the legal bounds. I am not quite sure of whether or not they are doing things legally or not. I am not in any position to actually say that. And you can't just say that, hey, this isn't fair use when you're just putting it as a dumping grounds for legal material. Though there are other facets that you might want to consider as to whether or not they're doing things illegally. Where, how are they getting these streams? Who is supplying those streams? Are you able to get those through legal means anywhere else? There's a lot of questions that you have to consider as to whether or not they are doing things legitimately. And if they are not, what do you do at that point? Do you say that anybody who is just talking about that particular site is in grounds to get a DMCA claim, or do you just target those that are actively linking to that site? What do you actually do in that sense? Though in one particular tweet's case, they were just linking to an Alexa search ranking of that particular site in relation to the Crunchyroll site. That is a little bit clearer as to whether or not it is in fair use, and I would say it is, because it is talking about search ranking. It is linking to an Alexa site. Alexa is a legitimate source for those type of things. They are not linking to any kind of anime streaming site. They are linking to a search ranking site. They are using that for educational purposes. They are showing the comparison of allegedly illegal anime streaming sites, and I'm only saying alleged because I do not know for sure whether or not it is actually a legitimate source in regards to somewhere like Crunchyroll, which everybody does know about. But we do not know if this was just Kiss Anime that was the infringing words that people were using. The reason for that is because of the other party that is being implicated in this scenario, which is Remove Your Media. These are the people who we have to talk about the most, because they are the ones that are actively sending out the copyright notifications. These are the guys that are actively sending these things out. They are actively using these bots. They are actively taking it upon themselves to enforce these copyrights. The JCCA are employing them. They are the ones that are issuing the notices to Twitter to take down these tweets. And to Twitter, they need to figure out a way in order to get people to defend their rights, to defend themselves. Right now, as far as I'm aware, there is really no way for anybody who is targeted by these bots to defend themselves in order to counter these particular notifications. Google has a way. YouTube has a blocked way, but there's a way to do that. Twitter, right now, as far as I'm aware, they don't have that sort of thing for people who are targeted by these things to appeal their case. And if anybody knows of any way that Twitter does that, let me know, because I do not see it. And keep in mind, this is by far not the only thing that is wrong with Twitter right now. Anybody who has followed the news about social media within the past few weeks will attest to that. And the random unfollows of people simply because of something that has to do with a password change. I have had several people unfollow me because they changed their password, and Twitter randomly unfollowed certain people, and I had to figure out what was going on, and they said it was a mistake and they refollowed. And at least one person followed me after they found out that they had blocked me for whatever reason. They had no idea why I was blocked from their account in the first place. So yeah, Twitter needs to get their act together, especially when it concerns something like this, in which normal people need to have a way to defend themselves against companies that can get draconian like this. And there's reasons to suspect that Remove Your Media has been draconian. Just looking on the Google Transparency report about Remove Your Media, at least 61 cases alone in October 18 15th were filed by Remove Your Media for SBS International, CJ Entertainment, and IS America, Viz Media, which uses it a hell of a lot, I would have to say. Viz Media does. And of course, you know they're not going to be the only ones that are there. There's going to be several of them along the way in 2014 and 2013 and beyond. Now, although I do suspect that there's a ton of those people that are posting infringing media and whatnot, they have a legitimate case to go after them. When you have that many cases that you are filing, and when you take into account the things with the internet's own boy and that anime blog that I was telling you about earlier, and the people on these tweets who are just talking about that particular site in question, you have to suspect at some point they're going to have a false flag. You're going to have a robot pick up something that they should not have. Now, these particular firms do employ a robot in order to scan particular terms and whatnot in order to tell whether or not something is actually in grounds for infringement. This is a dangerous proposition because you are, in a sense, telling them that they are guilty until proven innocent. You are not checking for any actual copyright infringing. You're checking URLs. You are checking words that a particular site might use that might raise a red flag to that bot, and then the robot tells somebody that, hey, they're infringing, or they send that DMCA thing to Twitter or YouTube or whatnot. This is not a human doing it. Now, in the event that they are a human and they are doing it in the case of the internet's own boy, then they have to talk about whether or not they should actually look into whether or not a claim is legitimate. According to Eric Green, that representative for Remove Your Media, about that particular incident, he said they were just following orders and that a distributor outside the US told them to take down that video. Now, I'm not quite sure what motivated them to go on that. They did not say who the person that issued the takedown request was. They are protecting their own there. And in that sense, you have to suspect that maybe this is not the first time or the last time that Remove Your Media has been wrong on that sort of issue. Remove Your Media is pretty stingy on saying anything about any particular aspect of how they go about enforcing copyrights. They don't say anything. And we know all about copyright bots. YouTube uses them a lot. How do you think that we got into that whole situation with Sailor Moon Crystal content in the first place? How do you think we got into that scenario? It's because they employ bots and they employ certain aspects. They don't care. The robot does not care what your video has to do with anything. It just cares that you have certain particular things in the video at all. And it is the same with this particular bot that goes through websites, goes through particular tweets. Now, you can tell it to whitelist certain people, but you got to know that these people you want to whitelist actually exist and actually don't want to infringe on copyrighted material, which 9 times out of 10, most people don't want to do that. They want to be legal. They want to be legitimate. They want to see themselves as legitimate, and they want to be able to tell the people who are using these bots, hey, we're not trying to infringe on anything. We want to just talk about your content. We want to just review your content. And that's another issue. What if these things go after review content? Stuff that is actually trying to tell somebody whether or not something is worth watching or worth picking up or worth buying. That is the danger here. That's the real danger about stuff like this. They're going after review content seemingly. They're going after people who just talk about certain things. They're just talking about whether or not you should go about buying a particular anime or game or book or movie. That is a real dangerous scenario that you could have here. Linking to a site where you can get stuff illegally is one thing, but when you're talking about just having that particular anime title in your URL, you run the risk of hitting review content, and that might be censorship. That is pure censorship because you're keeping information away from the consumer. Somebody who wants to know, who needs to know whether or not their hard-earned money is worth dropping on a particular product. That is a real concern, and it is a reality-based concern. That is not something that is within bounds of fantasy. That is a real thing. That is a real issue that you have to consider. And Japan does not have a fair use doctrine, but the United States does. And Remove Your Media is based within the United States, so they should know all about fair use doctrines. And when you're talking about certain people within Remove Your Media who are ignoring the fact that there is Creative Commons, whether there is fair use, when you're seeing these people ignore anything about the law, when you're talking about DMCA, something that has been flawed from the very beginning, you run run the risk of not only false flags, but you also run the risk of abuse. People who will use that to their own advantage to take down not only review content, not only things that will inform the consumer, but they will also take down competition. They will also try to use it to take down people who have done nothing else wrong rather than being competition for that particular person, who are legitimate competition, who are doing things legal on their own right. That is the real danger here, and Remove Your Media needs to get their act together on that front. Although we have seen in the past that they have been taken to task on several occasions and they have not improved on anything that they have done. Their robots still are doing false flags. They have seemingly not learned their lesson, and seemingly they are proud of their own ignorance. Apparently they are seemingly proud of what they're doing, and that is a real danger to people who not only want to talk about the animes in question but also want to review content. That is the real danger here, folks. We have seen people like Total Biscuit and Angry Joe and Jim Sterling get targeted by video game companies because they didn't like what they said about their games, so they used the DMCA copyright takedown system on YouTube in order to take down the opinions they didn't like about their game. We have seen game companies do that with Steam forums. We have seen people be banned from Steam forums because they talked about a certain controversy that that particular video game company was going through at that particular point in time. What makes you think that anime companies are not going to do the same thing? What makes you think that these people are not going to use that same system in order to censor opinions? It is a real danger. It is not something that is devised out of a fantasy realm. It is something that actually is occurring right now, and it can occur in the anime form if you let it happen. And the usage of stuff like this, in which there is no discrimination between what is an actual opinion and what is actual infringement, leaves the door open for abuse. It leaves the door open for stuff like that to occur. I can't say much about the legality of something like his anime or anything like that, but the reality of it is that it leaves the door open for stuff like that. There is no real way to determine whether or not the tweets in question were only those tweets in question, or just talked about the site in of itself, or talked about the site at all, or just talked about the animes that they had an issue with them talking about. There is no way to determine that because Twitter deleted the tweets. So how do you know whether or not they were copyright infringing on anything at all? Unless you archived it somewhere, you have no way to determine what those tweets were containing. So how do you know one way or the other? You do not, and that leads to some abuse. That might lead to other people getting targeted. What if that whole copyright situation that we had, that me and Peachy and Omar and Amber went through, what if that happens again to other people because of stuff like this? What if that happens again? What is there to defend the consumer? What is there to defend us, the content creators, to do what we have to do in order to inform people and to entertain people? What is there to protect us? Twitter has nothing to protect us, and that is the real issue here. And Remove Your Media needs to get their act together, or they need to really respond and to really improve their system. And for God's sakes, these people need to stop thinking that everybody who complains that their system is bugged is just doing so because they seem to be guilty. That is guilty until proven innocent. These robots are bugged. These robots are flawed, and you have to accept that fact. You have to accept that some people who are being caught are not infringing at all, and you're getting them caught in this web. You can't assume that everybody you catch is guilty by definition. You can't do that. Stop being so arrogant. I've seen people do this. I've seen these companies say, oh, well, they're just doing it because they're just complaining because they want to continue to infringe. How do you know that they're actually infringing if these bots are flawed to begin with? That's why you have things like appeals. That's why you have things that YouTube is doing, although it's really, really fear-mongering about how their language is when you go about doing that counter notification process. That's why Google has that type of system in case something does happen in which they are falsely accused of doing something or they are false flagged. These people have to stop thinking that their systems are so perfect, because they are not. Because if they were perfect, we would not have those types of systems. We would not have those appeal processes. We would not have stuff like the counter notification system or the way Google does it. Twitter needs to do something like this now. They have to implement a system like that now, because it's going to continue, and the way Twitter is right now, they are going to use that as a grounds to censor people. Don't think it can't happen, because Twitter, it already has happened in the past couple of years. Don't think it isn't happening. It already is. Just talking about a site is not grounds to take down a tweet, and it would help if people start giving us tools in order to combat at bullying tactics such as this one. And of course, we're going to keep you informed if anything else develops. Until next time, that's going to do it for this edition of the Special Report. Please remember to support independent journalism such as this one by sharing and liking the video. That helped me out a good bit. Thank you so much for watching. My name is JD Shadow, and that just happened.